Okay, this is the second segment of the CMIS Poster Lab series. If you haven't done so already, please switch your YouTube settings over to high definition 720p, or you're going to have some difficulty viewing some of these screens. Alright, so here we are at the "You Are Here" slide, and I'm just re-emphasizing that normally when you would do CMIS development, you'd have a stack of software between you and the CMIS server, language runtimes, HTTP libraries, custom libraries like Abdera perhaps, and then your CMIS application. In this laboratory, we won't have any of those in between us, so the things that we're doing are going to be identical whether you're on a Mac or a PC or a Linux workstation or a Sun workstation. It's .NET, Java, assembly, it doesn't matter. You're going to be doing these same protocol level operations, and specifically to the REST binding is what we're going to be doing in this series. So the target audience obviously is CMIS developers. And the goals is just to become familiar with basic CMIS at a really low level. Once you're comfortable there, building on top of it in whatever environment that you're already familiar with is just going to be academic. No skills required for this as far as languages. It's just a matter of pure browser and tools. So the agenda for this series, I'm going to introduce a couple of tools. The poster tool that we're going to be using centrally in most of these exercises, and the Firefox CMIS plugin client, which is just a native CMIS browser from Lotus that we'll talk about more later. We're going to go right into the service URL discussion and just briefly touch on some of the things that are in a service URL, because that's the starting point. Then we're going to dive into object creation, content creation, deletion. We'll stop there for this particular episode, and then we'll pick up with versioning, filing, query, other collections after that. So starting off with the tools. The Poster Firefox extension is a wonderful tool for debugging web service applications and HTTP applications. You can make HTTP requests directly and control all the aspects of the requests, from the headers, and then see a detailed inspection of the response when it comes back. The tool is available at this URL here, and probably many other places. Actually, I'd like to say thank you to the author of this tool, Alex. Really nice job. The CMIS Firefox extension. Make sure that this gets updated. The URL is here at the top. This is a native CMIS client written in Zool for Firefox. The article and source code for it can be found at this URL. And lastly, the server that we're going to be using for these demonstrations is the same server that we have posted on DeveloperWorks for free download. It's the IBM FileNet and FileNet Content Manager technology preview for Oasis CMIS, the reason for the long title. This is a server that serves up CMIS for both of our content repositories. Just a note here to clients. If you're developing a client for CMIS and you'd like to participate in interop testing with IBM servers, but maybe you don't have the resources to have your own content engine from IBM locally, contact me directly at the email at the end of this, and I will try to set something up with you. So the service document is the starting point. It's the door into the door with which you can gain entry into a CMIS server. And discovery of what the URL for a service document is outside of the scope of CMIS. But basically, you're going to get it from an administrator. in the case of the FileNet server, if you bring up the URL where you deployed the servlet, you're going to see a JSP page like this that gives you information about the server, the version that it's running against, what build, the location of the WSDL if you're doing web services, and then here we can see the repositories that are currently available on this particular server. So it sees 2 repositories, so it's serving up 2 different service documents, one for each. So let's go ahead and jump into the service document here for the repository Daphne A. And we get back the XML that corresponds to the specification for a service document. For more information on that, please consult the CMIS spec, and I'll give you the link to that at the end of this segment. Basically, I'm going to cover the very high points here. We have a couple of 5 very important collections. The first is the root collection, and this is the collection of all of the documents and folders that are in the root of the repository. From there you can proceed with navigation down if you're building some kind of a graphical navigation tool. The unfiled collection is a list of all of the documents that are not filed in any folders, if that's supported by the repository. The checked out collection, as you might expect, is a feed of all the documents that are in a checked out state in this repository. The types collection is metadata. This is the top level of all of the types that are in this repository. And then query is, lost my mouse, query is for doing queries against the repository. We'll spend a whole section on that because that's a very powerful feature. Just quickly scanning down here, we see there's a section called repository info. This has names and IDs, vendor names, product versions, and an important ID here, the root folder ID. That's going to come in handy later. Capabilities shows you what this particular repository is serving up as opposed to what is in the spec, because there's lots of optional capabilities. For example, you can see here the capability ACL. This repository is not supporting ACLs at this time. So if you're a smart client and you have a section on ACLs, you can just check the service doc and say, okay, there's no ACLs for this, so we'll just turn that section off of our code. Moving down a little further, one of the things that we're going to talk about in this series, particularly useful, is the object by ID URL template. This gives you a format of what a URL needs to look like if you want to retrieve an object if you know its ID. Like previously I just showed you where the root folder ID was. So if I were to take this URL and substitute the root folder ID where it says ID, do an HTTP GET of that value, I would get returned from the server an XML document corresponding to the CMIS specification that contained all the XML describing that object. All right. Well, we're nearly to the end of our 10-minute window here, so I'm going to jump to that information that I promised you. So here's my email address, and this is the URL of the CMIS specification that I was discussing earlier. Let's go ahead and jump to part 2 of the series now. Thank you.